up by completing the work that True Father started, and she continued successfully to this day. Heavenly Parent, we are so grateful for our true parents. They have indeed shed their sweat, blood, and tears throughout their lives. And we can emulate them ourselves by following this way of living for the sake of others. So please guide us to set an example in our family, in our community, and in our society at large, so that this world indeed can become truly a world of peace. There are still many conflicts in the world. There are still much tension and wars going on, Heavenly Parent. We pray for these conflicts to stop and for cooperation to come among people, because we are indeed one family under you. So please guide us. Indeed, our true parents are reaching out to the whole world for total salvation, to the 8 billion or so people throughout the world, Heavenly Parent. We are one family, not just on the physical world, but also in the spiritual world. We pray for the unification of the spiritual world and physical world at this time, with the liberation of our ancestors and the liberation of your heart. Thank you so much for this occasion. Thank you for all the events taking place in Korea on this occasion, the World Summit, the anniversary of the Holy Ascension. And the Parent, we could see our True Mother yesterday. She spoke to us, and we could see many world leaders supporting her and standing with her. And we pray that we can also stand with her with all of our hearts as they have given throughout their lives. Thank you so much. I offer this prayer this morning in my name of the Serge and Melissa Blessed Central family. Jew, please be seated. We just have a couple of announcements this morning. First one being that every Monday at 6:15, every Monday evening at 6:15, from 6:15 to 7, we have Divine Principle seminars with videos and discussion. It's in French and in English, so we can watch it for our own education, and also we're welcome to bring guests so that they can also learn about the Divine Principle. Very nice videos that we watch together. Second, this coming Saturday at 1:30, there will be a seminar for people who attended the blessing ceremony last month for the couples, so they can understand more deeply about the significance of the blessing. And so if you have any guests, please contact me or Isabel, and we will have a seminar next Saturday at 1:30 p.m. from 1:30 to 3. Finally, please enjoy summer. It's nice out there today. Okay, let's welcome back.
So thank you, Reverend Serge. And now it's time for another song, the new Seonghwa anthem.
With the
Now I'd like to invite up Reverend Serge Brosseau to give us the message for this morning.
Here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, let's see. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a PowerPoint today, so I thought we could look at Father's picture, the poster of the festival of Seonghwa. Right, okay. So yeah, today we are commemorating the 10th anniversary of our True Father Ascension, Holy Ascension. So it's significant because, as was said yesterday, number 10 is the number of completion. And well, I had a chance to be there 10 years ago. Reverend Bob was there also, and Champion for the Seonghwa. But I remember that there were many people there, and there was a lot of sadness upon the Father's passing, because we didn't expect Father to pass away. We thought that he was going to live forever. With so much energy. And I remember here at the chapel, we had an offering table here where we prayed while Father was in the hospital. Every night we came and prayed. So we set up an altar. And the fact is that Foundation Day was coming in a few months. So we thought, is Father going to be there, Mother? So Father passed away. But Mother did the Foundation Day by herself, and it was a great event. But what touched me at that time was the attitude of True Mother at the Seonghwa of True Father. She was so sad, and she regretted the fact that there were not more world leaders there to honor Father's life, to pay homage to him. But I remember her prayer and her message to Father was, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to complete Cheonggyeonguk. Please take care of God and comfort God. That was her message to her husband. So she was incredibly strong. And if not enough world leaders were there for the occasion, still we can be grateful that the World Peace Center, the arena, the auditorium where it was held, was completed, because it was brand new back then. As we saw yesterday, it was a lot of people, 20,000 people or so. But at that time, it was brand new. There were only one function taking place there. It was with True Parents. It was a Women's Federation for World Peace of the UN event that was held there before. That was the first one. The second one was Father Seonghwa. It was completed in time, and I heard that Daimonim from the spiritual world knew that Father's life was coming short, and so she mobilized people to finish it in time. So we see there the unity of spiritual world and the physical world in action. And so to prepare myself this week there for Father Seonghwa, I read the autobiography of True Father. I read it in French, my native tongue. It's also a beautiful edition of Father's autobiography, memoirs. And, there are, it's a beautiful edition. Our brothers and sisters and friends did a great job. Of course, it came after the English edition. And I love the Father's photo on it. It's one of my favorites, the picture of True Father. Beautiful. Looks so handsome at that time. And there's also more photos in the English edition in the French edition. There are, for example, there's a photo even from Canada in there with the veterans of the Korean War giving a trophy to True Father with Dr. Lee there. So that's a beautiful photo. There's also a photo of Father's 90th anniversary in the book, and True Parents' 50th wedding anniversary also, which we don't see in the English version because it was published before. So it's a book that reads very well. It's got over 60 chapters, but they're all very short, 4 or 5 pages each. They're very easy to read it. And for me, the words of Father were so real, and they really touched my heart because he has so much love for God, for all the creation and all mankind. There is no enemy in Father's life. He turned his enemy into his friends, his brothers and sisters. It is the heart of the only begotten Son who shed sweat, tears, and blood throughout his life. And so we read in the Bible that Jesus said to Philip, "Don't you know me, even after I have been with you for such a long time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father." How can you say, "Show us the Father," Philip? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? So this was what Jesus said 2,000 years ago to Philip. And so I feel that, throughout his life, Father manifested the nature of God as well. One that gives and forgets, gives and forget. Father did live that way throughout his life, and he never got tired. He had always had so much energy. And so, of course, Father grew up in North Korea at a time when the country was under Japanese occupation, and the country was suffering a lot. So many things were taken away from it. So I feel that Father grew up with a feeling similar to Moses, and with a strong sense for his people, that that his people were Moses felt that his people were being mistreated by the Egyptians, and Father felt as well that his people were being mistreated by the Japanese soldiers at that time. And so the liberation from Japanese came, but then the country was divided into two. And around that time, Father received a revelation that he should drop everything and go up north, which was occupied by the communists already. And as we know, he suffered severe imprisonment, was tortured, and left for dead. Somehow he recovered, even though the beatings left their marks on his body. But he only was thinking of God throughout. So Father spent 2 years and 8 months in the labor camp of Hungnam under the worst conditions. And in the book, we see a map of Father when he left Hungnam and walked all the way to Busan. Well, this is like walking all the way to Quebec City and back or more. So, and Father did that with carrying one person on his back part of the way. So this is incredible. And no, there were no restaurants on the way to eat some food. How did he manage to do that? Incredible. In the time of war as well. So we don't know about this time ourselves because this is before Father came to America in the 50s. But many of us were around when Father went to Danbury. This is more real to us because some of us were already members, and we remember well when Father went to jail in Danbury. And so Father went to jail on July 20th, 1984. Father was already 64 years old when he went to Danbury. He was not a young man, but he already had been to jail 5 times before. And this time, it's more like a country club compared to the prisons in Korea or Japan. But still, we can see the true nature of a man in times of crisis. It was a crisis for our movement when Father went to Danbury. being rejected after all that he did in this country. So in the book of Father's biography on page 184, we read, on the day before reporting to Danbury prison, I met with the members of the Belvedere Training Center in Tarrytown, New York. It was an emotional meeting. Thousands of people who had followed me were there that day and shed tears as they prayed for me. But I raised my voice and told them not to lose heart, because Father was not concerned about himself, but he was concerned for us, that we would not, lose our heart and our faith in the circumstance. And you may have seen recently there was a wonderful testimony by Peter Kim about Father's time in Danbury. Peter Kim was the chief of staff of Father at that time, and he managed all the, his schedule and the people that would come to visit him. And many VIPs came to visit him. Some big decisions were made when Father was in Danbury. And one, for example, was to hold a conference in Geneva of the Professors World Peace Academy with the title, The End of the Soviet Empire, which at that time was a very bold statement because the Soviet Empire was still very strong. But Father was announcing that it was the end of it. Very prophetic voice. But at the same time that Father was receiving VIPs while he was in prison, he was also cleaning up the tables, washing the floor, and really investing himself with the other fellow prisoners. So Father could do both, deal with the VIPs and be there to serve others while in jail at 64 years old. And he became, actually some of the other prisoners became close to him and even almost became followers of him. And some of them even watched for him at night after Mr. Kamyama left, because prison is a dangerous place. People could have attacked him at night, but nobody did. And one prisoner at that time actually committed suicide in prison while Father was there. His father felt so sorry for him and wished that he had taken the time to talk to him and help him to resolve his own problems. So we see Father's heart toward the people. So in the interview that we saw online recently, Peter Kim asked, so what if Father had not returned to America when he was indicted? Because Father was in Korea. He didn't have to come back to America. Actually, I think he was in Germany and he went back to Korea. Could have stayed there instead of coming back to America. But what if he hadn't come back to America? Would we have today the Washington Times? Would we have today UPF and all these organizations that we're working with? Probably not. Even at that time, other church leaders advised him not to come back. But Father brushed him off. He felt it was his destiny to come back because if he did not, the future of America was going to be very dark. He felt that very deeply. And so Jesus was crucified 2,000 years ago. And in that situation of incredible suffering, he was able to forgive, love his enemies, and pray for their salvation. That was Jesus' heart in the middle of crucifixion. And out of this came the victory of his resurrection. And then Jesus appeared to his disciples and they revived spiritually. And they were then willing to give their lives, which they were not willing to do while Jesus was there. So what Father experienced in Danbury was a crucifixion on the world level, because America represented the world level. And while he was in Danbury, he showed his love for the country that put him in jail by initiating many new projects to help America to revive the original spirit of the Pilgrim Fathers. And many ministers came to support him for the injustice that he was suffering, and also for religious freedom, because Christianity, the churches were being attacked. And from that, Christianity revived. The American Clergy Leadership Conference was established. And today we have the World Clergy Leadership Conference, of which here in Canada we are part of and we're working with. True Mother established that. So we can think that the Washington Times has a lot to do with the fact that people like Mike Pompeo, that we watched last night, gave a great speech, and people like our former Prime Minister Stephen Harper actually are people who are strong Christians, by the way, people who are now connecting in heart with True Mother. And this is why they can stand in front of thousands of people online throughout the world and give their support, their full support to True Mother. So we can see that in his wisdom, the incredible investment of movement made toward the media is bearing fruit. The wisdom that True Father had to invest like this in the media. And it's nice to see Stephen Harper being there with True Mother. He looks like a filial son to True Mother. So thank you, Franco, for taking good care of him. We appreciate it. Of course, when Father was in Danbury, it was a difficult time for our movement. There was a lot of persecution. And we forgot about this. We don't have persecution now. You meet people on the street, Sun Myung Moon, who is that? They don't know Sun Myung Moon. They don't know Unification Church. But it wasn't like that in the 1980s when we were often in the newspapers. We have been recently in the newspaper with the assassination of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, but it hasn't affected us here in North America as it has affected our members in Japan, who are going through a severe challenge right now. But it will pass, just like the incarceration of Father in Danbury passed and things came back to normal. So our members here in Canada, some of you had the chance to be close to Father and Mother when they came to Clearstone. Elder Bob will talk to us further about some of the stories of true parents being in Canada. I wasn't here myself. I was more in the US at that time, but I had a chance to see Father closely when he came to fish in Gloucester, Massachusetts. He would come to fish tuna when I happened to be there. And so Father would leave early in the morning and he would stand there on the ocean, even on really rough days, all day, come back late. It's incredible the strength that he had to do that. If you haven't been on the ocean all day when the waves are going up and down, it's it takes a strength to do that. And one time when Father caught a giant bluefin tuna, I happened to be on the boat that purchased this tuna, that brought this tuna. It was a buying boat, and Father came and he took a picture with everyone on the boat, and it was so nice for him to do that. And so we can see that true parents actually loved us more than they loved their own children. And so talking about fish stories, you know, when Father met with Kim Il-sung in North Korea, it was such an incredible event of Cain and Abel on the world, Jacob and Esau on the world level to meet. You know, Kim Il-sung tried so hard to kill Father, just like Esau had tried to kill Jacob. But when they met, they actually felt like brothers. Kim Il-sung being the older brother and Father the younger brother. And Kim Il-sung would talk to him about his stories of hunting bears in the mountain. And Father would tell him his stories about fishing, you know, in Alaska or in the US, wherever he was. He also fished in Prince Edward Island originally, catching some really big tuna. And one time when I was in Gloucester, Father spoke to us at Morning Garden, And after he spoke, we were all invited to join True Family on the beach in Gloucester. And so that was a special moment. We felt close together. So Father was such a visionary. You know, for example, he started the Little Angel dance troupe to be ambassadors of the Korean culture at a time in the 60s when our members hardly had anything enough to eat. Honestly, it was a very difficult time. Korea had been destroyed by the war, just like Ukraine is being destroyed by the war today. Korea was in a worse position back then. So it took a while to rebuild Korea, rebuild the economy. And in the midst of that, Father started a dance troupe and allowed investment to form this troupe. And so not everybody was supportive of that. You know, we thought, why do we need a young girls dancing all over the world? Why do we need this anyway? How about if we eat first, so we have a better place to live? But Father didn't listen to that. And today, what do we see today? Korean culture is everywhere. We see it in music. We see it in dramas on television. We see it in movies. So it's an incredible phenomenon. Father saw that vision that the Korean culture would be really celebrated and appreciated, because actually the Korean culture has a lot to do with God. So there were many miracles along the way in Father's life. Just one to mention here. In 2008, sometimes we forget, but Father was involved in a helicopter crash. Father was already 88 years old. There were 16 people in the helicopter. True Mother was there. Peter Kim was there. He felt like he had died. 2 of the grandchildren were there. But they were able to get out of the helicopter before it caught fire and exploded. So it's a miracle that everybody was saved. And True Parents suffered some injuries, but they rebounded. This type of accident, nobody survives usually. But beside the incredible accomplishments, there is a heart of our true Father that we could feel during his lifetime. Now we have to think, why did the early members in Korea, when there was nothing to show, there was nothing externally to show, why did the early members would drop everything and attend Father at the Champadong Church, for example? Or why did the graduates not the graduate, but the students at Yuwa University would, leave class to attend True Father at the Champadong? And they were even kicked out of the university at that time. They must have felt the heart of God from Father, just like we did when we went to Belvedere and we would listen to Father while sitting on the floor for hours. And this week, there was a funeral service for the father of one of our brother. Fred's father, Georges Lacroix, passed away. And Pierre and Gino went with Claire and the grandson, great-grandson of Georges. And they had a funeral service there. And in his message to his father, Fred said that his father once shared in a family gathering of the Lacroix family, actually where the Cardinal Cyprien Lacroix, the Archbishop, l'Archevêque de Quebec, who was part of the Lacroix family, of the same ancestor. So Fred's father shared that his son, Fred, had joined l'Église de l'Amour. That was his feeling. He felt that our church was l'Église de l'Amour. Because actually his sister-in-law, his wife's sister, his wife was French, and his wife was living in France. She was involved with the movie business, the distribution of movies, and she was involved in the distribution of the movie Ticket to Heaven. And so when she saw that, and that she realized that her nephew was involved with this movement, she says, "Get that son out of there." So he had to check for himself. what was this all about? And he went to visit different centers in the US where Fred was, where he joined. And actually, that was his feeling. These people really care for each other, and they care for the people at large. And he called us the L'Église de l'Amour. So, what a beautiful story. And so, God bless your soul, Georges Lacroix. So, if we lost that touch, perhaps along the way ourselves, let's get that touch back where people can come to us and say, oh, this is L'Église de l'Amour. So I want to conclude my little message today by saying that, what is extraordinary is that 10 years after Father's passing, our movement is going strong in many ways. And True Mother has kept her promise to Father to take responsibility for everything, and especially for the second generation, for example, the education of the second generation. And she's almost 80 years old today. And we saw her yesterday, and she looks great. And we saw also, unlike when Father passed away, many world leaders being there at the World Summit, coming from all over the world. Religious leaders, political leaders, standing by her, offering their support for the unification of North and South Korea, which Father could not see through in his lifetime, to his regret. So this is a task that True Mother will fulfill. And I would say that True Mother stood by True Father for 52 years. And especially in times of crisis, like there was several of them, she wanted him not to feel lonely. So she stood by him. So what can we learn from True Father's life? Well, one thing I would say is that Father trusted God all the way from the time when there was nothing, when he suffered incredible persecution and torture and beatings. He trusted God completely when his life was extremely difficult, all the way to the time when actually there were big breakthroughs in our movement, such as the time when he met with President Gorbachev and also with Premier Kim Il-sung at the risk of his life. He never wavered in his love for God and his absolute faith, regardless of the circumstances. And True Mother is the same. So Father completely trusted God. True Mother completely trusted Father. So let us completely trust True Mother today. And we shall see a world of peace. Shall we?
Yes.
Adieu. Thank you very much. And this was my message. And at this point, I'd like to invite Reverend Elder Robert Duffy to share more about his time with Father, especially because he has a lot of experiences with True Father. Right? Amen.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Serge. Thank you. Thank you. Always a hard act to follow with Serge. Am I positioned right for the cameras, the lights?
Don't worry. All good.
All good? Well, anyway, thank you all. Anyway, it's quite a comprehensive talk that Serge gave. So not much left to say. Thanks for calling me up to say something. So it struck me that there's, just recounting experiences is all very well, but we're kind of a mature audience here, so we may need something a little more substantive. And my concern at this point in the movement's development is that a lot of our members are not well connected to the world around them, for which this movement ostensibly exists. And the problem with that is that while we build our movement, build our own activities, and it has an internal logic and it's developing quite nicely. How well is it relating to the world around us? In the last couple of days, I've been making notes on reporting on the sessions at the ILC in Korea, where Franco was there. In fact, I report on one of his sessions, the session he chairs, which is on the God Conference and on the women and youth movements in our movement. But among those conferences that I'm reporting on, I do some research because I have to understand what these guys are talking about, some of them. And one of them was a representative of Hun Sen, the Cambodian prime minister, who's been prime minister since 1985. I think he had to twist a couple of arms in order to stay in that position for that length of time. In fact, I read the history, the timeline of Cambodian history, and it's really unbelievable, because you remember in the 70s when Cambodia was under Pol Pot, and almost 2 million people were driven out of Phnom Penh, out of the cities into the countryside, and under the crazy notion that if you get your hands dirty in the soil of the earth and do some farming, you're going to change completely, become a new person. Well, maybe given time and given the fact that you can stay alive during the process, you might gain something from that. No doubt you would. But this fellow had the idea that just from some magic, that you would change. So he ruined the country, killed about half the population. And after that, still the Khmer Rouge were active for many, many years. So Hang Sen was active as a kind of a human rights guy and early political activist at that time, trying to find his way. And gradually he became a prominent person in Cambodia. And in the process of trying to make a democracy, he really struggled quite a lot. So when I looked at all that, I realized how much we have to get through. If you look at it from God's point of view, how much we have to get through to raise humanity up. Different parts of the world need different things, but certainly much of the world needs so much raising up. So then I think about Father's work and how many organizations he established, how many projects he made, and how much he worked, how desperately he worked to achieve some kind of opening in each of these sectors. So I guess the one thing that really comes to me that I'd like to share with you this morning is when I was, I think, 27, I was a national leader of Canada, 1974 to 77. And during the 1976 period, I had been invited to become one of the leaders of the European leaders group. When they met with Father, he would have the European leaders come and head main American leaders. And so I was included in the European leaders. And so I got to sit with Father. And the first meeting I had was, I think, in February of 76. And Father launched this Yankee Stadium campaign. It was the bicentennial of the United States, and Father wanted to do something, wanted to basically both elevate his name in the United States and speak to the American population at the same time. So he asked all of the leaders to do a series of conferences, of speeches in their own country. So everyone was supposed to give 3 major speeches, both to high-level people and to regular people. So 6 altogether. And on the bicentennial theme. So I came back, kind of in a sweat back to Canada. Said, how are we going to do this? We had about, I don't know how many members we had at the time, but not a whole lot. 25 or 30 members, maybe 40 tops, through in the whole country. And so we were going to do something like that. So we organized a 3-city program: Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto. And so I had to write the speech, and also we had to organize and get people to come out. But basically, my feeling at the time was, I'm a dead man. I'm a dead man. I felt like I was walking the plank in one of these pirate movies where you're on the ocean and Captain Hook has decided that you've got to go. And so they put a wooden plank out from the edge of the boat, and they march you up there with a sword at your back, and you have to walk to the end of the plank and then take a dive, and you're bye-bye, you're gone. So I felt like that very much for the entire 4 or 5 months leading up to Yankee Stadium. But eventually, by working together, we got it all together. We were able to bring 1,000 people to the States. And the day after that, Father had me over at East Garden to give a report. I was so tense, and I was so tense from all of this crazy things that happened when we brought all these people. There were shooters from the apartments around where we stopped the buses. They're shooting windows out of the buses for sport. I mean, it was crazy. We were walking through the Bronx. There were bonfires in the middle of the street. It was like, where are we here? And I had all these Canadians, who I felt responsible for, and not to have them killed or something, get them to the stadium and get them back on the buses back to Canada. So I was pretty tense, but anyway, Father had me over at East Garden with the American leaders the next day, and he stood me up and had me give a report on it. And I was watching the American leaders around the edge of the wall, around the edge of the room, and they're don't put this on tape. They were kind of a little bit what the heck? This guy really made us look bad. And then Father said, look, you guys couldn't bring anybody from across the state line. This guy brought 1,000 people from another country. And so, Father is kind of guy who will roast you, with good reason. And, if you've ever seen a worm on a hook, it's a bit like feeling a bit like that. So I feel for the guys. It wasn't pleasant, but then Father announced that he was moving up the Washington Monument Campaign from April 77 to September 76. So that really got everybody on their toes, because it's a big job to organize a campaign like that in a major city, in the capital city, on a major venue where you could put 500,000 people. With how are you going to do that? So that really was pretty tough. But I guess my point is that while Father's a person who lives constantly, to me anyway, on that plank, on that pirate ship. When you're on the plank in the pirate ship, you're all alone. Nobody wants to be with you. They'll say, have a nice time. I'll be behind you all the way, you know,
Mhm.
well behind you,
Push
you
it.
know? And he's always there alone with God. And when you're in life and death situation, you're alone with God. It's you and God, nobody else. But God's big
Mhm.
and you're small,
Mhm.
a lot smaller. So you don't have the same confidence as God has.
Mhm.
You know, he created the whole thing. He's okay, I think. But you know, I'm on the plank here. It's between me and the water.
Mhm.
So that's Father's life. But Father also said that whatever I do, you can do. If you want to be, if you want to be with God, if you want to make a foundation for God to be with you, you can do the same as me, and He'll be with you just like He is with me. Father had that kind of conviction. Why? Because Father is a human. He's not like Jesus. Well, Jesus, of course, is a human, but He was made to look like a deity who had different stuff, was made of different stuff. And as much as you tried to emulate him, you could never be like Jesus because he's just got this God stuff in him, you know? Father never had that attitude. Father was never like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of us would like to push him right up there because it's difficult to live at that level. Very difficult to live there. But in fact, we're all capable of being vessels of God with that, and indeed that's our destiny. Because consciousness has to live somewhere. It has to live in us. God is the consciousness of the universe, okay? And we're made of that stuff. When the breath of life comes into us at birth, that's the God consciousness that comes into us and forms our spirit, okay? Through give and take, our spirit grows, but basically it grows in relation to the God consciousness, the breath of God that has come into us. So we are little gods. So I guess what I'm saying is that God wants to dwell in us fully. And the same God who creates the universe wants to dwell in little old us. So why does God want that? Because otherwise he's lonely. What else is he going to do? If you can't die after 100, 200, 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 100,000 years, are you going to get a little bored? What are you going to do? If you're all by yourself, what are you going to do? There's no stimulus. There's nothing. There's nothing but you. Me, and mini me. It's all me. So that's the situation why God created us to be little gods, to be ultimately equal gods, to be people that he could have give and take with, who could be a source of stimulus, so he wouldn't be alone. And he created that under the rubric of true love, so that there's no manipulation, there's no, basically manipulation and using the other for one's own gain. That doesn't exist in God's realm. Okay. So let's keep that in mind. This is Father. The Father we know is completely great as a human being. That's what makes him so spectacular. He's human. And if he can do it, so can we. And that's what his challenge is to us. Remember in the speech on May 1st, 77, he gave basically the American members, I don't want to use the word, but you know what I mean? Gave it to them. And because he was challenging them, basically. He said, you're not worthy at this stage. You're not worthy. You want to be able to receive God's love? You want to be able to embody God's heart and love and be something to God. You got to make efforts to revolutionize yourself in order to make that happen. So that's all comes to my mind when I think about Father's 10th anniversary with Seonghwa. I remember, like Serge says, we were at the Seonghwa and there were no world leaders essentially, virtually nobody. It was an inside church event, and it was good from that point of view because there was really an outpouring of heart and the pain and sorrow and loss, the feeling of loss that everyone felt that Father had passed, and almost like Serge says, like, how could he do that? He was going to live forever. He was still young and vibrant, you know, at least until 2012. So anyway, and 10 years later, so much has happened. Mother has done so much to make good on Father's mission. So, you know, in a way, you know, we should also realize that Father's view of messiahship is that we are all messiahs. We're all messiahs. We're all called to be messiahs. But most of the time we shrug and say, yeah, you're right. Sure. I'm no messiah. But we're sharing the messianic responsibility. And that's exactly what Mother has done in the fullest sense. She's taken on the brunt of the mission and actually made good on bringing the top level people. And what that's done is it's set us at a certain point where God is free to do certain things, because now, and I want to say something about UPF, toot the horn a little. UPF is the organization within our movement that has actually created friends and made friends in many places around the world, in high level places. The effect of which is that on that level of folks who run countries, who are in charge of universities, who are scientists of note, and so on, business leaders, top people, those people understand what we're doing. They don't get the whole theological package. They don't get all the ins and outs of the theology, but they do grasp the essential direction, the essential place that we're going, and the modus operandi. And they accept that their problems can occur. The fact that Abe was murdered and assassinated, and that the Japanese media jumped on the Unification Church as a scapegoat, even though the guy was not a member and clearly from a very troubled family. Still, those top level people are in Korea now, right now. Whether Trump is governor, giving a message, if you don't like Trump, he was still the president of the United States. Pence gave a message there. Harper, Pompeo, Heng Sen, all kinds of people were there. And they basically are standing with us because they know who we are. Now, if we had no friends like that, we'd be basically, and if we had no media foundation ourselves, we'd be kind of victims of the Japanese media, for example, or the world media, who say, you're this, you're that, you're that, you're that. If you take a poll, and somebody has done this recently, the media globally are about 80 to 90%. It was a 90 or more percent left of center. There's almost nobody right of center. There's almost no conservative people in the press. And they wouldn't function there because the higher ups are leftist, the editors and the managers and so on. And that's what they've gotten from their education at university. They've been indoctrinated in, and this is not just polemic, this is well documented by now. So we would be nowhere without having made the effort to make friends in higher places so that people understand on leadership levels who these people are and what they're about. So that's Father's genius. Like Serge was saying, he set up the little angels when there was nothing to eat. Always the Father prioritized reaching out and communicating with everybody. So that's, what can I say? Father is very, very missed. When I hear a speech of Father's, I mean, it's like tasting something. I remember the taste. I remember all the kind of circumstances around it. So we can miss Father very much, but let's try to be what he wanted us to be and to find the father or the mother, the true father or true mother within ourselves, okay? That's how best we can honor him and his Seonghwa. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bless
you. Well, I think now we can have
Oh yeah, cheers of
three
Akmansei
shares of Dr. Monse.
by our Akmansei champion,
Yes.
our very own Gino
Yes.
Masiotra. Amen.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you so much, Serge and Bob. It's really meaningful, really deep sharing. But now I'm on the plank here. So let's try our best, okay? Let's stand, please, okay? So victory for Heavenly Parent. Amen. Victory for True Father's 10th year anniversary, Seonghwa. Amen. And victory for True Parents. Amen. All right, thank you.
So we're gonna you can line up here, we're gonna distribute the fruits, but don't go after it because we're gonna take a picture, okay? And then we'll cut the cake downstairs. So